Hi, everyone. My name is Cinda Fry. I am with the Department of Education in the Child and Adult Nutrition Services. I'm a program specialist and also helping lead Farm to School here. I have been with CANS for a little over a year now and absolutely love Farm to School. Along with us today is Kwana, and I'll go ahead and let you jump in, Kwana.
Thanks, Cinda. I am Kwana, and I'm a colleague of Cinda's, so I'm in the Child and Adult Nutrition Services as well. My focus is in the procurement area, which is just shopping. And I will pass this on to Janelle Peterson.
Hey, welcome everybody. I am Janelle Peterson. I am working with the Department of Education right now on farm to school things. I was previously a food service director in Rapid City for a number of years, as well as worked in the state agency as well. So a varied background in this. So enjoying my time learning and teaching others about farm to school. So hope you enjoy this.
So to get us started, we do want to share a little video from Rhonda over at Meade School District. So I'm going to share this. I should make sure I shared it, sorry, with audio. Okay. Perfect.
Hi, I'm Rhonda Ramsdell. I am the Food Service Director for Meade School District, and I serve as President of South Dakota School Nutrition Association, and I'm here at the Black Hills Farmers Market picking up corn, as you can see behind me, for my schools. And so I just wanted to do a short little video kind of explaining to you how we do our local vegetable purchases. We use a procurement method that is the micro purchase method, and so what that means is that we have to spread our purchases around and not just use all one vendor, so we're going to share the wealth, but also we don't need to have bids. What we do is need to prove that it's a reasonable price. So we're going to go through that just a little bit here. I just hope you just have a few minutes today to walk through this with me. So what share the wealth means that we're going to use approved vendors. And who approves a vendor? Well, basically you do. You have to have a method for that, and what we do is we know that food safety is the most important thing when we're buying food for our kids. So farmers have a thing called GAP certification. It's Good Agricultural Practices certification. We don't require that certification, but we do require that they use good agricultural practices. So what we have is a farm questionnaire that we have them fill out, and that helps us determine that they are keeping food safety first in their mind. So once we have this pool of approved vendors, then we just need to know what do they have for sale, and they need to know what we want, how much we want. So for that, we have a partnership with Black Hills Farmers Market. That's why I'm here today. What they do is they're able to match up farmers and purchasers through their wholesale market. So we do a lot of back and forth making these deals. But so for this corn today, I contacted Cox's, whom I bought corn from before. They're well known in our neighborhood for corn, and so we made arrangements that I would pick it up today at the market while they're here. We do some other methods as well. For instance, one vendor runs a delivery route on Thursday, so they'll be delivering cherry tomatoes to one of our schools tomorrow. So that's exciting too. Also last week we got watermelon. So there's a gentleman at the Black Hills Farmers Market that goes and buys fruit to bring it back and sell it at the market. So he went to Woonsocket and got freshly picked melons for us and drove them back here. So last Friday I picked up freshly picked melons that were in the field that morning, and so the kids have been eating this great melon all week and they're just thrilled about it. So sometimes it's a bit more work, but it's well worth it for us. So how do we pay for this stuff? Well, Black Hills Farmers Market sends me an invoice through email, and then we just pay that by credit card. So they get paid right away. As soon as we get the produce and see that it's what we were looking for, they get paid right away. But we do have, for instance, we have a farmer down by Piedmont who happens to also work for the school. So she qualifies with her GAP practices. So she's an approved vendor, and she brings tomatoes, peppers, and things like that from her garden, and cucumbers for our schools in Piedmont and Stage Barn. So that's another way to do it. And then she just invoices us, and we cut her a check on our monthly check run. So there are lots of ways to do this local purchases thing, and I hope that if you haven't done it, that you'll give it a try. If you're not sure if your method is kosher, talk to the CANS office, give them a call or shoot them an email and tell them what you plan to do, and they've been very helpful to me. Anyway, I got corn to shuck, so I better be getting back to the schools. I hope you have a great day. Thank you for spending a few minutes with me.
All right, we are going to start with Miss Janelle Peterson. So yes.
Okay, yes.
And if we include the link, or if we include the presentation, then the link will be right there as well for that video.
Perfect. So so what you heard in the opening video was a food service director using the micro purchase process to purchase local products for her school meal program. The micro purchase process simplifies farm to school purchases for both the buyer and the producer. So here are 5 easy steps in the micro purchase process. 1, you're going to determine a reasonable price for the items to be purchased. You heard Rhonda talking about that in the video, and we're going to go into that more a little bit in an upcoming slide. Purchases need to be less than $10,000, and that's per transaction. That's not total in a year, that sort of thing. That is per transaction. You're going to purchase from an approved source. Again, Rhonda talked about that in her video, and we're going to talk about that a little more. We're going to rotate purchases equitably amongst suppliers. And then we've got to maintain invoices or receipts to document purchases. So next slide, please. So what is reasonable price? Food service directors must determine that what they are paying for a product is reasonable. So the way they determine that is that they may look and see what the cost of the items at other vendors' booths are, if they're at a farmer's market perhaps, and they're kind of looking around to see what the price of a certain product is. They might also look and see what the price to buy it in a retail setting is. And they might also check to see what they could get it from their commercial vendor that they're buying their food from. Again, not saying that they have to use that exact price, but that's just giving them something to go on for what it looks like prices could be, so that they know, again, what a reasonable price might look like. When we talk about spreading the wealth, what does that mean for micro purchases? Equitable distribution of purchases can be accomplished with a single purchase or multiple purchases over time. So let's say, for instance, you're going to purchase apples from several suppliers at the same time. That would be one way to do it, so that you're spreading the wealth. You're not just buying from a single producer. Again, as long as you don't exceed $10,000, you're fine. There's no bidding or quoting because you've checked out what the prices may look like. The other thing that you might do is maybe you have a number of vendors that you are able to use. And so one month you get supplies from a particular vendor. The next month you go to another, again, perhaps that's buying apples, another apple producer. The month after that, you get from another apple producer. So again, you're continuing to rotate prices between suppliers throughout the year or the growing season, again, it kind of depends on what you're purchasing. And each food service director determines how they spread the wealth. It often depends on availability and geographic location. So the great thing about micro purchasing is there are rules, but they're pretty flexible, and it's a great way to purchase farm to school. So I'm going to turn it over to Kwana to do a little bit more of a deep dive into this process.
Thanks, Janelle. So Janelle's correct. Because food service dollars are being spent, the correct rules must be followed in purchasing. And documentation is always obviously a good place to start. And there is the procurement plan template that your school may already have, but this is the likely place where these sorts of things will be described. Next slide, please. We talked about micro purchases and just the nature of farm to school. That is likely where the purchasing is going to be, and from the micro purchase process. As Janelle said, it's less than $10,000 per purchase. However, you can have a contract, and if there is a contract, well, that bumps that up to the small purchase. But generally, we'll just assume that you will be doing your purchasing in the micro purchase. And this table is in the purchase plan, and so it just describes the different levels. Next slide, please. Then in section 2 of the purchasing plan, this is where you will describe your micro purchasing process. And since the farm to school is part of that process, this is where you would describe that. So let's do the next slide, and I'll zoom in on what is printed there. So as you can see, in this micro purchase plan, this school goes to Ben's Groceries as well as Beth's Groceries to get small item quantities. They go to one hardware store, and the reason that they only can go to one hardware store is the next store is 25 miles away, so it's not practicable to go to spread that wealth as was described so well. So if it is described in the procurement plan why only one vendor is being used, then just one vendor can be used. But then the last two items, it's the farm to school part of it. So the garden plot, why do you buy from the garden plot? They purchase farm to school items directly from the farmer. They have demonstrated good farming practices and provide additional education opportunities to the students. So that's the justification for using the garden plot. There happens to be another vendor that can be used, and it is the 4-H club, we'll say. So in this case, this school will be able to use 2 different vendors for their farm to school products. Next slide, please. So back to the procurement plan, of course, the food service director is likely the person that is filling this out because they do the menu planning and the purchasing for their food items. But the plan must be approved. In some schools, it is approved by the superintendent. In other schools, it is approved by the board of directors, the school board. So depending on what method your school uses, whoever creates the plan must sign the plan, and then whoever has the authority to enforce the plan and to approve those decisions. This is where you would explain to whoever is approving these purchases that you ensure that the vendors are approved, that they do the good practices, whatever criteria that your school chooses to use. But it must be signed by whoever is writing the plan and whoever approves the plan. So next slide, please. Oh, this is what I just kind of already said. So is the responsible official is most likely the food service director, and the second signature is a position of authority. Next slide. So because this is a living document, just because you have a procurement plan at the beginning of the year, doesn't mean that it's not going to change. You may add vendors. There may be another farm to school opportunity, another vendor that can provide what you need. And so you would need to add them to your plan. And so you can, if you see over to the right there, I said that on October 1st and 22, JSK approved the use of the garden plot, but in August, JSK approved the use of the garden club or the 4-H garden club. So you can choose to do it this way, or but you must make sure that whoever approves the plan is aware of changes. And that is all I have for the procurement plan itself. So Cinda, I guess you can take it away.
Thank you, Kwana. So of course, with all federal funding, we're going to have some regulations along with, even if this isn't with your federal funding, even if this is in a daycare, just so that producers are aware what schools are looking for, what, CACFP, any daycares, any childcare facilities are looking for. We're going over, the fresh, whole, unprocessed produce. Those are automatically considered approved sources. So it means that the items have not been cooked or processed or cut in any way other than to harvest it. So examples are like apples, watermelon, and tomatoes. As long as they come to the child care facility complete, whole, and intact, they're automatically approved. Processed items are going to be anything that's been cut, cooked, preserved, or prepared in some way. It must be prepared in a licensed food service establishment under the supervision of someone trained in food safety. So an example of this, turning local tomatoes and onions into fresh or frozen salsa, if purchasing the salsa at a farmer's market or a farm stand to use in your school nutrition program, this process must have been taken place in a licensed food service establishment. Some schools even rent out their own kitchens because they are a licensed food service establishment, not a commercial licensed food service establishment, but licensed and inspected by the state so that they meet the health code regulations. Anything that is canned, it's a little bit trickier, and those must be commercially processed under their respective food regulatory agency. So if anything else were to be processed and given to the school, just to review, it has to be in a licensed food service establishment, but canned goods must be commercially processed. So now we look over at our beef, pork, and bison. So of course, South Dakota, we love our beef. Beef to school, taken over, which is wonderful. There's, also an interest in serving bison and other meats. And this is a great option for South Dakota. It's available year-round. And the South Dakota Animal Industry Board has a great publication titled Selling and Distributing Red Meats in South Dakota. So that goes through the requirements. The link is here. I know it's on the Specialty Producers Association page as well. Very available. You can see a list of all of the state inspected facilities or process facilities that have been state inspected by either the state or USDA. There's a whole list of them there. Our biggest thing is we want to make sure that it has all been processed in a state facility if it's within the state of South Dakota, or USDA if it is outside of the state of South Dakota. So if it's within, perfectly fine. If you receive meat that is individually wrapped and there's a stamp on it that says not for sale, that is exactly what it is. It is not for sale. You can absolutely not use that for any federal funds. But turns out if you're having a little community barbecue and you're not, charging anybody, then that's perfectly acceptable. But if you are charging for that, and it cannot be for sale. So we want to make sure that all of the meat comes with their markings and bearings that say that it has been inspected. So just some basic rules when it comes to our food, of course, approved. Like I said, fresh, whole, unprocessed. Things that are not approved are like raw milk and milk products. Those have to be commercialized. Processed foods that are graded and manufactured under an inspection, absolutely approved. But food processed and packed in a private home or unlicensed food service establishment, I don't think you really want to take the risk with that. And like I said, meat that's labeled not for sale, also not approved, but meat slaughtered and processed under inspection in a USDA or South Dakota state inspected facility, absolutely approved. So other things like eggs, shell eggs, egg handler, grader licensed, and egg dealer license is a must, along with liquid, frozen, dried must be produced under USDA inspections, and you do not need to have the eggs pasteurized to be served in schools. They just need to have that egg handler, grader license, and egg dealer license, along with the milk. So grade A must be pasteurized and vitamins A and D added. And those are pretty much the basics. If there's any other questions, of course, you can always reach out. I only included my information here, but I'm sure we can get a hold of Janelle and Quana as well with any other information. If you have any questions, please let us know. You can visit our CANS office and of course our good old non-discrimination statement. Are there any questions right now?
What can somebody who wants to help their school, somebody just, a typical parent that wants to see farm to school happening, what can they do to help their school nutrition staff to make it easier for them to bring that in?
Janelle, would you like to answer your ideas on that first?
Sure. There's a couple different ways to do that. That's a really good question, because it all depends on who. You've got to find somebody who wants to bring this into the school. So if your food service folks for some reason are scared or really nervous about this, then it might help to, while you could have a conversation with the food service people, it might be okay to go to the superintendent or the business office or something like that. You kind of have to know, where are you going to get some buy-in at? And so if you, so again, it's, how do you do that? Because if say just for some reason that the food service person is just real nervous about this, then say you go to the superintendent or business manager, they can broach that with the food service person. And then when that food service person is nervous and doesn't know what to do, the best place for him or her to call is Cinda or Quana or something, and they're going to be able at the state agency that will help, and then they'll have a partner and somebody that can help them walk through that. So what I would say is don't give up. It just might be you might have to take a couple runs at it, but the best place to start would hopefully be with your food service person. But again, if they're too nervous about and worried about the regulations or that sort of thing, then certainly start with a school board member, superintendent, business manager, something like that.
And just to add to that, sorry, we've had, I've received phone calls from everyone within that list that Janelle just gave, from the board meetings, from the superintendents to principals to teachers and parents who would like to make these changes. And like Janelle said, just having someone on your team who is there for it, that can help ease the food service director, because ultimately it is the food service director who is going to be making those purchases and making the menus and everything else. So if you could get in with that person, absolutely, but you want to make sure that you ease their worries. But it could be anyone.
I'd like to add something as well. One of the major worries that I have listened to is that the service director does not have time. Because remember, the product coming into the kitchen has not been processed at all. So once it gets into the kitchen, it needs to be processed. And you can ally those fears or those concerns by volunteering, because volunteers can go into the kitchen and work under the sight of a food safety trained person. So that's one way to get around that as well, is to come willing and able to help.
Laura, do you have any other questions that any producers might have when approaching a school?
The one thing is, as I can tell you, or I would suggest too, as a producer, to if for some reason they say I'm a food service director at a school and I'm wondering about this, feel free to throw that word. Hey, I know you can do this by the micro purchase process. And they'll like go, wow, you know about that? And so, and so again, just kind of letting them know you talk their language, but know that is a way that you can make it. So it's kind of a nice first step and a way to just keep the conversation going.
Right. I feel like a lot of the questions that I think a producer might have are actually going to be covered at that upcoming producer training that we're having. For those listening to this recording, in January and February in Brookings and Rapid, there's going to be bringing the farm to school producer training, which is really going to gear the focus on how producers can make that connection with schools and kind of collaborate.
And of course, all of this is going to be on the CANS website as well. We have our farm to school training there. And it is, I'll give you the exact link here. It's showed Rhonda's face right away. doe.sd.gov/CANS. I'll put it in the chat. There's also a directory in there. If you can never find my number or anything else, you can always give it to any schools, anybody who has questions about it, and producers can call us too. So if anybody reaches out to you and they have a lot of questions and you don't have any answers for them, that's perfectly fine. You can reach out to me. Janelle can answer their questions, Quanah, and honestly, any one of our program specialists in the CANS division. They're all well-versed in farm to school, farm to table, farm to fork, anything that you want to consider. But that is all we have for today, Laura. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for doing this.